Hi guys, every year I try and read as many books as possible. In 2024, I set myself a target: less scrolling and more page turning. Less scrolling, more page turning. If you have a look on your phone and see how much screen time you do, I was shocked at how much it was, and I decided I'm going to try and intentionally read more books rather than just endlessly scrolling. So that's what I did, and throughout the year I managed to read one book a week, and I've read about 52 books. And every year I try and review them, and this year was really interesting. In the podcast that I do for sports friends called Audio One, I spoke to a pastor called Pastor Chad, and he talks about splitting his books into three different categories. And this is what I did: I split them into three categories. You might have your own. I don't know what your categories are. One for me was leadership development. Secondly, it was coach development, and then thirdly was Christian development. So leadership development, kind of personal development. Second one, coaching. I'm a coach, so coach development, and the last one, Christian development, because I work for a sports ministry organisation. That's important for me. They were my three areas. Thank you, Pastor Chad. Of course, you can watch the Already Won podcast. Also, what I did was I keep an eye note of all the different books that I read. And my wife challenged me this. There's lots of information you read, but what about application? So what I did was I wrote down a lesson that was learned from every single book to try and remember at least one lesson and try and apply it to my life. So I'm going to go through the different books that I read. I've got different screenshots. I'm going to go through 6 at a time. Let's dive into the first 6. So firstly, I went into 6 different books for my personal development, leadership development. I read 6 books. I read the High Performance book from Jake and Professor David Hughes, one of my favourite ones. I try and read that every year because I absolutely love it. John Maxwell's a brilliant leadership guy. It was a good book around the 12 irrefutable laws of leadership. Then the one thing, I always read this book as well every year. This is one of my favourite ones. This is on my top 5 a few years ago. The One Thing, brilliant book. Can't recommend that enough. Then I also read Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before from Dr. Julie Smith, a really interesting one. I read quite a few books from different doctors around specialist stuff. Another one was Chris Van Tuliken, then talks about ultra processed people. So he talks about how our food is massively just ultra processed and the damage of this in the West, and really talking about changing our food a little bit as well, which is really worth reading. That nearly made my top 5. At the end of the video, I'm going to go through my top 5. One book that did make my top 5, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Next 6 is a combination. So remember I said my leadership development, coach development, Christian development. My coaching wise, I've looked a little bit of Michael Calvin, No Hunger in Paradise. I coach an academy, and there's some really realistic stats about the reality and stories from different people who've been in academies. Other bits, I'd looked at Samuel Ryder. They were kind of all three. So the businessman, his kind of story about his life, really interesting read. Then things around Dopamine Nation. So this is fascinating around just how we're all kind of addicted to this. Finding the balance in the age of indulgence. I really enjoyed that. Dopamine Nation, definitely worth reading. The Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. I don't really love the guy. He pops up all over my social media and stuff. But the book was fantastic. 33 Laws of Business and Life. How to talk to absolutely anyone. Interesting book on there. And then The Culture Code as well, The Secrets of Highly Successful People. I really enjoyed that and applied that to my work as well. The next 6, these were around a little bit about coaching, but a lot around that personal development, leadership development. Again, 5 steps to achieving high performance, how to change your life. The newer book from Jake and Damien from the High Performance podcast. Love that one. Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday. I really like all his books. He kind of looks at the ancient Stoics and kind of compiles information together. That was really good around that. And he's not a Christian guy, but for me, obviously being a Christian, it was interesting, kind of this idea of just not putting yourself at the centre of your life. I thought that was fascinating. Legacy, I read this again every year. This is lessons from the All Blacks, really, really good. Shane Parrish, Clear Thinking, brilliant book, turning ordinary moments into extraordinary results. I love that. It was one of my favourite books. Thinking Fast and Slow. This is a good one around just different parts of your brain. Just taking a little while to stop and think before making a decision. Different research on the brain about how you can make decisions. I found that was really interesting. And then Simon Sinek, one of my favourite authors, The Infinite Game. Again, a really good one. There's other books on there. Start with Why and Lead As Eat Last. I've talked about those before. Fantastic. Then when it comes to Christian development, got this book from my line manager, An Unhurried Life. Really enjoyed that one. Tim Keller about prayer was good. And then also other ones as well on there. There was a Church Army book called The Barking Dogs, talking about evangelism. Dan Strange plugged in, The Magnetic Points, how to connect faith with basically what you watch, read, and Play was a lecturer at college. Of course, The Cost of Discipleship by Bonhoeffer, a classic. So I've compiled them all together. These were the kind of 4 lots of 6 all in one. Enjoyed those books a lot. Then the next lot I read, so in terms of my leadership development, I really enjoyed this. Like I said, Ryan Holiday, Discipline is Destiny, talking about self-control. Again, really, really good book. This is a fantastic book, The Psychology of Money, timeless lessons about wealth, greed, and happiness. You'll see that on loads of book recommendations. John Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, interesting guy. I didn't love it. Different points that he brought to the table. I didn't love it, like I said, but it was good. Two that I did love, though. Jim Collins, Good to Great, talk about different levels of leadership. Absolute classic. Must read that one, in my opinion. And then Deep Work. This was really good for just having a son around, just like eliminating different things and trying to focus on deep work. And that really helped me kind of chunk work and do that a little bit, especially in my job that I'm doing working from home. That was a classic. And another book I read was Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. This is a story about basically the whole part of Nike, the story of the whole journey about him nearly going bankrupt, and he had another company and working with different people in Japan and different things. He talks about the art of competition is forgetting your limits, forgetting the voice in your head. Well worth a read. Next 6, Christian development. Enjoyed some of these ones. So Rowan Williams, Being Human, I got that from a friend. Raising a modern day knight, that's about raising a son. So if you're a father, new father, that was good. And the next 4 were fantastic. So Red Moon Rising is Pete Greig's story about the 24/7 movement. Really enjoyed that. And these next 3 for me, in the work that I work in, Mission Drift, When Helping Hurts, and Toxic Charity, must read. If you work in, I would say, in Christian charity, those 3 mission work were incredible in terms of just loads of things, pointing out loads of stuff, the importance of thinking about why you do what you do, and the danger of mission drift if you don't keep the main thing. So must reads if you're involved in that work. And then the last 12 I've got on here in terms of my coach development, Marcus Rashford, You Can Do It, really easy read, good one for kids. A few autobiographies. I read Neil Warnock, his Made in Sheffield, hilarious about his kind of approach as a football manager, some hilarious stories in there. Alex Ferguson's autobiography, that was brilliant. Premier League years, I listened to that on Audible, and that was an interesting one, just about looking over the 25 years. You roll back the years at Premier League history. Tiger Woods, when he first declared pro in Milwaukee, and his early journey, I read about that, which was good. And then Dan Carter, The Art of Winning. This was amazing. I remember reading this when I went away, trip for work. The Art of Winning, 10 Lessons in Leadership, Purpose and Potential. That, for me, is a must read. I'm going to talk about that. It did make my top 5. And then lastly, to finish off the year, Make Your Bed, classic. This one, ex-military guy, talks about small things which make a big difference. First of all, make your bed first thing in the morning, and you've done that. And then a really good book around A Greater Glory, From Pitch to Pulpit. A minister called Gavin Peacock used to play for Chelsea and Newcastle. Definitely worth reading again. The Body Keeps a Score, really good book about trauma, and really, again, this scientific look and dive into trauma, which is worth looking at. Jonathan Edwards, I looked at his book around the Holy Spirit and Revival, some interesting stuff around his life. And then these 2, definitely worth a read. These narrowly missed out on my top 5. Stolen Focus, Johan Hari, You Can't Pay Attention. Just this idea of just how our focus is completely stolen in the modern world. Definitely worth reading. And then John Mark Comer, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. My goodness me, Christian author. That was a book around just healthy rhythm, slowing down and going at a slow pace. So they're all together. All my books together. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do you afford to buy these books? Well, I always ask one for Christmas presents, for books. In a few weeks' time, that's all I've asked for my family. The more expensive ones. I then have Audible, so I listen to Audible books. I don't read all these. I listen to them in the car as I'm driving to training, as I'm running, as I'm in the gym. I also bookshare with friends, so if I like some good books, I'll share them and get like swap books and stuff. I've really enjoyed doing that. And then also at the local library, I rent books as well, so I can get them from there as well, which is worth doing as well. Library card is free. Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Here we go then. Top 5, very hard to call, but number 5, Make Your Bed. William H. McRaven, he says this: grit and determination are always more important than talent. Anything you achieve in life is a result of others along the way. To measure the size of a man, measure the size of his heart. In number 4, Clear Thinking, Shane Parrish. Again, really great book around just the way we think and organising your thoughts. He says, good judgment can't be taught, but it can be learned. Build systems that lead to good habits that have accountability. So number 3, Atomic Habits by James Clear. These two kind of recommend each other. Yeah, again, similar kind of thinking to Shane Parrish. Don't change your goals, change your systems. So you can have all these goals, change your systems. I've mentioned before about habit stacking, a really good book around habits. Number 2, Dan Carter, The Art of Winning. I tell you, absolutely loved it. He talks about the secret of winning is your mindset. Remember, you can't do anything without teammates. It's consistency that holds the key to true high performance. And he talks about that, and I absolutely loved it. Really well written. 10 clear lessons, leadership, purpose, and potential. Definitely worth a read. Dan Carter, what a book. And lastly, the number 1 book I read this year, The Diary of a CEO. In terms of how it was written, how it's laid out, like I said, I don't really enjoy seeing this guy pop up everywhere, but this year I loved it. He talks about a pressure as a privilege, and it only comes to those who earn it. He said, in business, the person with the fewest blind spots stands the greatest chance to victory. And I love that idea of just getting feedback from peers, from friends, from your wife, from every way possible to try and eliminate those blind spots. And he's interviewed so many people on his podcast, and I think that is a kind of amalgamation of all the lessons that he's learned from different people. So a brilliant book, absolutely loved it. Thoroughly recommend it. They were my top 5 for 2024. If anyone has any recommendations, stick them in the comments. I'd love to read different books that you recommend. Like I said, you might come up with your own categories for what you want to read in the work that you're in the world that you're in. Those are my 3: leadership or personal development, Christian development, coach development. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next year in 2025.